Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here to hear my presentation on the power wheel. I will tell you some things today that you've probably never heard before. We will be watching a video in a few moments, and then there are going to be some overheads. We're going to try to cut it as short as possible so we can do some demonstrations over here. But right now, let me give you just a small background of what I have done and what I am doing now. I've been in science and industry for probably 35 years plus. I've worked for aerospace. I've worked for NASA not directly, but with a subcontractor. Worked for McDonnell Douglas Corporation. Worked for Motorola. Worked for many other smaller companies. And all of these different positions that I held added to my knowledge base. And throughout the years, I learned a lot about many different devices, electromechanical devices, some about chemistry. I am not a chemist, but I have worked extensively in chemical formulations, have done work for the funeral home industry, and I have had a rich and a full life. As everyone, life does bring difficulties, but I've had the good times and I've had the bad times. And I'm very thankful that I'm here today. I would not be here today speaking to you had it not been for my very close friend, Bruce Perrault. I met Bruce in 1997 at the Tesla conference in Colorado Springs. I actually knew about his work earlier. I did work with the chlorine tubes, and I did have results. I did not have large outputs, but they did work. If they had not worked, I would never have teamed up with Bruce. As usual, when I built the tubes, I went my own way, and that's why they didn't work as well as they were supposed to. That's the nature of an inventor and a dreamer and an entrepreneur. You always have to go against the grain, do something that no one else has done. But again, I do credit Bruce for having me in this alternate energy field. I've been interested for many years, but I did not have the person who was as closely related to this field as he was. Bruce does a lot of the science, does all of the science. I do some of the science, but I am a manufacturer. I'm a designer. I build equipment. I build machines. I have machines right now from the previous employers that I worked for in many places in the world. They're one-of-a-kind machines. They were machines that were built. The manufacturers wanted a cost-effective machine, and that is the nature of the business I am in now. So I wanted to give you that brief background of where I'm coming from. I've had a lot of experience, and I want this to be on film. I do not know everything, but I have learned that if I keep an open mind and listen to other people's opinions, that I can learn a lot. Even though I may not agree with what they say or what they are doing, if I will listen and evaluate what they are saying and do my research, then I can find out if what they are saying is correct. And I hope that you do that with me today. I do not claim to have all the answers. The machine that you see here today was built in less than 2 months. Actually, the assembly time was done the last week before this conference. I have other contracts which consume a lot of my time, and the parts for the actual machine that was supposed to be here today did not get finished. They're in the machine shop. So you will see something that will at least demonstrate the principle. Perhaps at a future date, you will see what we were wanting to have here at this time. Could you please run the video?
Cooperative of people living and working together. Linden is a cold
During
village
this
of
movie,
farmers
I may be
just
pointing
like
out several
thousands
things
of
to
others
you
in the region of the very
and
cold
ask you to pay attention to
However,
what will be coming
Eden
up.
is also the home of a special form of human life, which is capable of attracting more and more people from all over the globe, and which has again and again caused astonishment through its excellent functioning, even in extremely difficult situations. There is no doubt that the formation of Maternita is also a good part of the life story of Paul Bahlman. Through his extraordinary technical capabilities, but also through his astonishing practical wisdom, he opened relations to all kinds of people with ideals and in many places, and pretty soon the idea to form a cooperative enterprise took shape. In the name of the God Almighty, people of equal thinking gathered and founded a cooperative which could serve as the economic basis of this spiritual community. We want to be a united group of brothers and never separate, however severe the burden may be. This was the solemn vow. Renunciation of alcohol and smoking, and the will to realize a harmonious community life without dispute and discord, like in the original Christian communities, were the prerequisites to become a member. For the members, Maternita is an ideal opportunity to lead a fulfilled life by practicing charity. A workshop was erected. And soon, one house after the other grew on this premises. Also, all construction was done out of own resources and solely with the savings from the common work. Today, Maternita is an enterprise with several production companies and properties worth millions. The people working here are almost without exception members of Maternita. Not even the prospering development which took place over the following decades could impair or even suppress the global idealistic aims. On the contrary, everybody works in his own interest with diligence and great joy towards the erection and the support of their new homeland, and according the principle one for all and all for one. With this word one can conquer anything. Also the ancient truths appear again and attain respect. The people living here feel themselves as members of a family. A group sitting in the same boat and proud, but also grateful proprietors of their own beautiful homeland, which they may shape exactly as they wish to. Evidently, this form of human social life can function only on the base of idealistic principles. The question arises how the realization of a sincere religious philosophy of life may be brought in harmony with a successful economic management. It is not obvious at all that this is attainable. Nowadays, there are many amongst us which are caught in the worldwide and dense network of social and economic dependencies and obligations, and many also feel the confrontation with its problems. One member of the Economic Directory has recently phrased this in the following way. The fact that all essential functions of maternity are fulfilled without any external force, driven solely through inner conviction, which causes everybody to help and take care of the other. This is for me the most astonishing effect which is produced by this form of living together. It seems to be a miracle. Another miracle within maternity is the testatica, which is the result of more than 20 years of research and contains the secret of the secrets. Here you can see the members of the research team which took part in this development. One of them is Paul Bahlman, who, with his high capabilities and his outstanding knowledge about the acting laws of nature, but also through his high sensitivity, has contributed very much to this invention. This wonder machine is learned from nature, nothing else. Nature is the greatest source of power as well as knowledge which man has, and it still conceals many secrets which are only revealed to those who approach and tie in with them with highest respect and responsibility. In order to understand nature and to perceive its voice, man is obliged to experience silence and solitude, and it was there where the knowledge about this technology was obtained. For these reasons, it was always a great concern of maternity to acquire properties untouched by man as far as possible, be it in valleys or forests, in the mountains or ashore of lakes, where one could study nature, one's own being, and the creator of all this universe in silence and concentration and without being disturbed. The public never understood this properly, rather interpreted it wrongly as an act of seclusion, assuming we had to hide something unclean. We actually had, and still have, to take great troubles to realize undisturbed all the things we intended to accomplish. Whatever we can learn from nature while being in nature is of greatest benefit, not only for us, but for everybody. This because all positive expands more and more just in virtue of inner laws. such undertaking in
Notice this
research
wire.
and development necessitates considerable financial expenditures. Therefore, we are quite often obliged to construct things with most primitive means and materials. What was thrown away by our affluent society, we collect and possibly set up with it a cornerstone in the discovery of new forces and truths. We were fortunate in gaining the experience that paradoxically the most beautiful and gigantic results can be achieved by just using the most simple means. Never did we use any borrowed capital because we want to stay free Swiss citizens and do not want to be hindered or even bound in any way in the pursuance of our aims. Two counter-rotating disks generate an electrostatic charge. One disk represents the Earth, the other the cloud. Using grid electrodes, the charges are bound. After that, they are collected by non-contacted so-called antenna keys and then sorted. After being initially turned on by hand, the disks rotate by themselves according to the electrostatic laws about attraction and repulsion. A rectifying diode keeps the cycles in steady state. Otherwise, the impulses of attraction and repulsion would accumulate and cause the disk to run faster and faster. The correct speed is of great importance, and for optimal power generation, the disks have to run quite steady and slow. By means of grid condensers, the energy is stored and then uniformly discharged, at the same time reducing the high voltage and building up power with additional devices. Finally, the machine supplies an uniform direct current which varies according to the size of the model. The machine furnishes about 3 to 4 kilowatt permanent output, depending on humidity, whereby the electrical potential ranges from 270 to 320 volt. High humidity of the atmosphere prevents the buildup of electric potential. The drier the air, the better. No doubt, through the so far achieved results, one main objective has been reached, namely to prove that it is possible to use free energy. Nevertheless, the research work is not yet completed. To finish a model which can be handed out more or less to anybody and without any haphazards, also to non-specialists, much work and also time will still be needed. To the educated physicist, many of things of this machine may seem impossible, maybe even crazy. Maybe he is also offended by the conception used to explain the whole. Only partly we could use the concepts of conventional physical terminology in order to explain and define only approximately the functions and properties of the various parts of the machine. After all, it will be necessary to create some more new concepts, like the one we have already used before, when we termed the non-contacting collectors of electric charges as antenna keys. This machine puts experts who are just trained in conventional physics to a very hard test, because its mode of action is not explainable with the state-of-the-art of officially accepted physical knowledge, or at the most only partially explainable. However, also a trained specialist should remain free and independent in his thinking and should avoid to be limited by the temporal framework of publicly admitted knowledge in any science. It has to be remembered that the established sciences were already many times forced to change or give up some of their very fundamental concepts. Think about Galileo Galilei in order to name only one example. Our human society almost condemned this man as a sorcerer and magician just because he investigated and discovered a truth which seemed unacceptable by the established science of the days. The book knowledge of any time is not wrong, but it is incomplete and therefore allows to draw wrong conclusions. We are part of a new area which brings to light many new facts and new knowledge. The clothes of nowadays science have become too tight and should be stripped off just like the larva of an insect does with its skin. Only this will allow a true metamorphosis to take its course and finally, at the limits and at the destination of all worldly knowledge, an universal and unlimited spiritual science, radiating and beautiful, just as the completed imago of an insect may give its blessings and benediction to a renovated humanity. To ever reach there, an universal development of man has to take place. But this is only possible when man becomes aware of his true role within the whole creation and again learns to recognize his true tasks, because the whole universe functions within a strict and precisely structured order according to the will and word of the Creator. Therefore, also man should recognize and realize these universal laws which are valid within the whole and also within every part of this creation. But the hard facts rather show how far man has left the divine order through his self-will and authoritarian way of action, and that he has become the actual cause of all discord and evil on this planet. Unfortunately, the ruling bodies which should be responsible for the well-being of the people work too often with the target to make life more and more difficult and to render impossible every free spiritual development. Instead of utilizing the achievements of science and technology for the benefit and preservation of all forms of life, they are abused carelessly and irresponsibly in order to destroy and to kill, and thus turn them into a curse upon mankind. To change all this, The evolution of a new technology is not enough, even if it were the most ecological and ingenious. To change this present status, one has to go much deeper down, to the root cause of all this evil, and this is man's way of thinking, his state of mind. The ancient divine commandments are still valid today and also show today the way and direction humanity should go, as clearly spoken by the prophet Micah. God has told you what is good, and what is it that the Lord asks of you? Only to act justly, to love loyalty, to walk wisely before your God.
What you saw, the Teslatic machine, was based on the James Wimbhurst machine. This first transparency that I have is a picture of an early machine made by Carl Winther. It was a type of Wimbhurst machine. Let me just leave that up there for a moment. With permission, I'm reading from a book called Homemade Lightning. We have permission from McGraw-Hill to show these transparencies and to read a few short excerpts. So that you will know what the Teslatic machine was based on, rather than give you an explanation, let me just give it to you out of the book. It won't take but a moment here. There are presently two main classes of electrostatic generators. The first type charges by frictional slippage or impact. This means there is direct physical contact between two different material surfaces. Frictional charging in an earlier time was called triboelectricity, tribo being the Greek term meaning to rub. Otto van Guercke's spinning sulfur sphere in 1663, which rubbed against the hand, was the early form of the electrostatic machine. Later, in 1768, Mr. Jesse Ramsden and Mr. Jan Eigenhaus developed glass disc generators that rubbed against a leather pad coated with metallic powder instead of the hand. The frictional generator using glass discs reached a high level of development in 1856 with Carl Winther's design. This was one of the early designs. That was the first class of electrostatic generator. The second class of machines are called electrostatic induction generators. The word induction, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, in the context means to bring about an electrical state in a body by proximity, closeness without contact of another electrified body. The induction generator was originally called an influence machine. I'm going to go through these quickly. This is James Wimbhurst's original design. You can't see the two discs on it, but the two discs are about 1/8 of an inch apart. You will see the metal segments. Many of you know how these operate. I won't go into detail, but this is just a picture of his early machine. This one was of interest to me and maybe to you also. This is the largest, probably the largest Wimbhurst machine ever built. The discs were 3/8 of an inch thick glass, 7 feet in diameter. Each disc weighed 280 pounds. When I first saw this picture, I noticed the crank down there, and I asked myself, what type of an individual did it take to turn those two wheels, which weighed a total of over 500 pounds? This machine is on display in the Museum of Science. I believe it's in Chicago, Illinois, the last I know about. I have never seen it, but that's what the book says. I want you to notice the size. There's a small machine setting near the handle. That was probably 14 inches in diameter, 24 inches in diameter. So you see, back in those days, they were really into static electricity influence machines. This is another design that James Wimbhurst had. It was a multiple disc. I believe there's 6 discs on this one. They had a lot of problem with these, as you saw on the video. If you remember, the gentleman said that they vary with atmospheric conditions. So what they did to this one, they encased it in glass and put chemical drying agents in the glass case, which allowed it to operate with a steady output. This was a machine that did not have the sectors. That was the little bars that go on the disc. This was a design. It was an original Wimbhurst design, but it was designed and built by Picolet. And that is all I have right now on the Wimbhurst. I want to tell you a little bit about Paul Bahlman, the man that they spoke about in there who invented the Testostica. I'm not going to give you a full life story. I would just like to tell you where this man was coming from. He was a common everyday man. He was intelligent. He was an inventor. He was a craftsman. Paul Bahlman was a watchmaker, a clockmaker. He knew about gears, and he knew about timing mechanisms. In some of the material that I received, it said that he did not have an education in mathematics and science at all. As was stated in the video, much of what he did on this machine was learned from nature. Paul Bahlman also went to jail at one period of time. I don't know someone told me yesterday why he went to jail, and I really don't want to get into that now. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he built the first model of the Testostica while he was in prison. So this man, using the resources he had, built a machine that at this time is probably still running in the community of Merthernia. There's more than one machine there. They have all sizes. They have single disc. They have dual disc. And as I understand it, they have a large one right now that is being built, but there are not enough funds to complete that particular machine. I don't know if that's true. Someone told me that just recently. So I want to thank all of the people who sent information to me on the Testostica machine. And I must say that in many of the papers that I received, they used the word Testostica, which is okay. But if you would have seen the beginning of the video, which was not shown, it was clipped. The true name is Testostica. That is what they called it on the video. I want to thank Josh Korn for sending me information, Mr. Alexander Peterman, Bruce Peralt, Don Kelly, and perhaps there are others. If you sent information to me, I want to thank you at this time for doing that. It was very helpful. We did not have a lot of time to go through it. We had about 2 months to do this complete project, and it had to be put in between other contracts that I have. So at this time, I want to tell you a little bit about what I believe they may have been doing with this machine. I am not stating that this is what they did, so please listen carefully. I am only saying this so that your mind will be stimulated to think in different terms than just reading the information that is out there right now. Again, I am not saying that the Testostica machine operated exactly as I'm going to explain it, but this is a possibility. You did not see the beginning of the film, it was clipped. The first mode of energy that they worked with at Merthernia was windmill power, wind power. They also did water power, and I believe they experimented with solar energy. Well, very quickly, I'd like to just go through a scenario that may have been what they did. The windmills could have been electrostatic generators. If you noticed the wire, remember I called your attention to the video to look at the large wire, one wire with large insulator. Is it possible that they used an electrostatic generator in the windmills, transmitted the high potential down that wire, and also at the beginning of the video, which you did not see, they had what they called accumulators. These accumulators stored the energy from the windmills and perhaps from the water wheels. That was in the beginning, before they built the Testostica machine. Could it be possible that they simply had the electrostatic generator in the windmill, transmitted the high potential down the wire, brought it down to the Testostica machine, and there transformed it so that it could be used for whatever value they needed? Remember, I told you earlier that Paul Bahlman was a watchmaker. Could he have just built that device as a timing device to get the 50 cycles that they needed? The man was an expert at building clocks and watches. Is that possibly what they did? I just put this out to you to stimulate your brain a little bit. I'm not saying that what is written about it is incorrect. I just want to steer you in another direction. Because many times, inventors have their minds on a single track. You don't want to go another direction. You have to learn to be bold and step out and go in a direction that you haven't gone in. It's important to have people from all areas of science to help each other. It's not happening today. There's a big war going on in the people who are in the free energy field, people in industry, people in the federal government. As you saw in the movie, those people had a very free life. I'm not saying that I agreed or disagreed with what their lifestyle was. I'm saying they had freedom. Many of us wish we would have that kind of freedom today. Okay, let me go on from here. Now let me go and take a few moments here to get things started, and we'll talk about the power wheel. Now, if we didn't break any wires, this thing should run for a long time. Also, many of you have played with this machine. Just a very quick demonstration. This is a Wimbhurst machine. This is what the Testostica device was based on, according to what is written. I would like to do a brief sketch. I know I'll be in the way for someone here, but let me do this quickly. The original device that I was to bring, these markers are not really very good. I will try green. There we go. I used to be very good at drafting, but when do it this way, it's difficult. As was stated in the information in the exotic research flyer that you saw, I was to have a special bearing. I must say that does not have a special bearing because we did not have time to complete it. The time frame that I was given was just too short. Right here is a ruby ball about 1/4 of an inch in diameter. This is a hollow stainless steel shaft, whatever length you want. The one I will be using in the future device is 6 inches long. This is about 1 inch. 1 inch thick. This is looking at in view just as if what you're seeing there, looking at the edge of it. These are 2 discs with a spacer in between. And everything that you see on top of that little board, actually a piece of PVC, will be in here, with the exception of the glass jugs that you see. They will not be in there, of course, because everything will be sealed inside of this. This device was originated as a dream that I had at the Tesla conference after Bruce Peralt spoke in 1997. The next morning after his speech, I woke up and I saw the picture of it. I saw the complete plans of it. This is what I understand many inventors do. You have a lot of dreams. We're called crazy sometimes, but those dreams many times down the road come to fruition. So the original design was to have a certain type of material in here. That has changed a little bit, but the basic concept of what I saw in the dream is the same. There is a small motor in here. It's a very precision motor, not expensive, but very, very precision. The motor shaft is at the top. The motor shaft is stationary and is attached to the top support beam. Inside the wheel will be everything that is needed to make this a self-energized rotating disc. Another reason I'm working on this is because I have contacts with an independent space agency at this time who would like to see this device used in the rovers similar to the ones that were used on the moon and similar to the ones that are used on Mars. Now, I know you're wondering, said, are you going to give this to the government? Well, I don't know at this time. First of all, my love is humanity. My love is to be able to get information out to everybody. We want to be free, and if we're going to be free, we as manufacturers, we as inventors, must first take into account the welfare of human nature. The American people are being drowned in politics. The American people are literally being enslaved. You don't have to agree with that if you don't want to. I may or may not present this to this independent space agency. I have already spoken with them. We have no ongoing contracts. I would like to tell you exactly how they're going to use it, but I would be violating something that would possibly give me a contract in the future. But this will be an enclosed device. All the triggering circuit, all the circuit boards are inside. The energy source, which is capture capacitors, which has been a great controversy. And I will show in a few minutes my work with capture capacitors before I met Bruce Peralt. Before I met him, I didn't really know what was going on. Bruce clarified it, and because of the information he helped me with, I was able to perfect something that you may want to call a battery, and it doesn't make me any difference what you call it. I know what I have done. I know what it will do. I do not claim it's perfect, nor do I claim it will run forever and ever, but it will run for a long time. And it is something that they will try to disprove. But I want you to remember, ladies and gentlemen, I don't care where you're coming from. I respect every person in here who has a higher education. I respect everyone that has a degree of any kind. I do not ever want to cut down anybody that has that, because that's where the conflict many times comes between the people of the university level and the people down here. I do not have a degree. Contrary to what was written in some of the information about my biography, I do not have a degree, but I probably have more hands-on experience than 90% of you in here in many fields of science. Not bragging, I'm just letting you know where I'm coming from. But what I want to see is I want to see the people with the higher education. Listen to us little ones down here, please. Listen to what we have to say. Just because there is something that is written in a book, just because there is a law that says something has to work this way, please do not close your mind to what we have to say. Because many of the great inventions, just as you saw in the video, Paul Bahlman designed that piece of equipment and he had no higher education at all. Please understand, I am not cutting higher education. I am all for it. I wish that I would have been able to get my doctorate. I do not have a doctorate. I do not have a master's. I do not have a bachelor's. But I have 35 years of experience in the business world. I have projects all over the world that I have done, and I have learned a lot. I'm not here today to present anything to you that I would not personally want to put out into the world. Not everything is perfect about what I'm showing you. So one of the things that I'm going to do today, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what I've done here, but I am going to take the privilege as a speaker and not give you every answer that you want, because I do not have all the answers. But I am working on them, and I can assure you that as soon as we have answers, as soon as we have more information, it will be out there. I will present it to Steve Elswick to put in his magazine and any other means we have. We want to present what we have. As a successful businessman, I do not want something that cannot be used. Why would I put my money and my time in something that is not used? So I'm just telling you that you're going to ask questions, and I'll just politely say, well, I don't want to answer that. And you don't have to trust me. You can call me whatever you want to. It makes me no difference. I've been called many things in my life. So I have a very tough skin. Just a few more details. This is a magnet. I use neodymium magnets, very powerful. They're grade 30, they're nickel plated. I use, in this device, I'm using very short ones. They're 1/2 inch diameter, 1/8 of an inch thick. I only use a few of them in this. When this wheel rotates, there is a proximity switch. I can tell you a few things. There is a proximity switch in here. There is a coil which has magnets in the center of it, similar to the Kohler device, but does not operate like the Kohler device. As this rotates, depending on what speed you want, and depending on how much energy output you want, that's what determines how many proximity switches you put in here. The proximity switch simply opens and closes the energy that comes in from the capture capacitors. The little coil with a magnet, you will be able to see it after the presentation. You can come up and take a look at it. It acts like a tickler. That's what I call it. It may have another term. What this does, as the wheel rotates, there is a magnet. There are two magnets, which are simply one on each side. They attract to each other. They pass over this coil, and as it passes the coil, it gives a little blip. The capture capacitors that we're working on, they love that. They like equilibrium, so they're always wanting to go back. They're always wanting to go back to their point, where they are. The proximity switch, which is on this side, simply opens and closes the circuit, and you can put as many of these as you want to on this device. I do not work on a high, this does not work on a high voltage. This does not work on high voltage. We operate with this device on 3 volts, a little less than 3 volts. The 3 volts is stepped up, and in a few moments we're going to give a demonstration. If we didn't break anything, we'll give a demonstration. But you're going to be asking questions about capture capacitors, so let me very quickly what you see here looks exactly like a battery. That's what everybody would call it. But this is the first unit I built. It has changed color a little bit. 3 years ago, I put a date on it, start date 6/19/1995. Didn't amount to much, didn't put out a lot, about a half a volt, about 100 and, well, between 150, 200 microamps. Very interesting. You can take a test lead, hook it from one side to the other. I don't want to do it now because someone may want to look at what's in there. Short it out for 24 hours. Short, that's a dead short, just like you took a car, like we took that car battery. I mean, you'd get some sparks from that. This is not a high output, I agree. But you can take that the next morning or 24 hours later, whatever. You can go longer than that. Take the jumper off, wait a little while, you put a meter on it, you just watch it come right back up. You can do this time after time after time. And I would say for at least 1 year to 1.5 years of that time, I have had a microammeter directly across this device. Now, you know, most of you who know what an ammeter is, that's almost a direct short. Very close. Is that correct? Not direct short. But I've had a microammeter across it for that period of time, and the output stayed steady. Does move a little bit with barometric pressure. Now, that was the early version. These are some newer versions I'm working on now. That is also the newer version. What I do here, I have a proprietary material that I add to these small jugs. I don't know if you can see this. It's a small jug. I believe it holds about 6 ounces. To 6 ounces of distilled water, I add 1/2 teaspoon of a mixture of 4 different materials. These are proprietary materials. I cannot reveal them at this time. But we add that material in here. We add water. It takes about 1 week. This is still a weak spot in this particular type of capture capacitor, but it takes about 1 week for these to stabilize. They will have an immediate output, but the output is about half of what it will be after 1 week. After that 1 week, everything stabilizes. There will be a slight coating on the negative electrode. Once that coating is in place, it's set. I cannot say that these devices will last for 20 years, but I do know that I have run devices similar to that. I have had them sitting on the shelf. They produce a lot of bubbles. I'm not going to tell you what the bubbles are because I don't know exactly everything that is in that bubble. The liquid level in these containers does not change after the first week. You can go on as long as you want to. For 3 years, the level in this container has not changed, and yet it is putting out energy. Is it true? I want somebody to answer up. Is it true that most of the batteries we know about, I know there are special cases, but the batteries that we normally know about, are they either acidic or basic? Is that true? Would somebody please answer? Are they? Yes. Okay, thank you. We'll do this if we have time. If they don't chase us out of here, we may get to check one with Hydrion paper. These capture capacitors will show about at that point, which means it could be ever so slightly on the basic side. This would be acid, and this would be base, or alkaline, as you would, like alkaline batteries. We're working presently with many different types of these capture capacitors. Bruce Peralt presented his work. We have other work that you have not heard about. We have also made capture capacitors that can be used in microcomputers. Yesterday, my son, who is with me here today, Jonathan Tesh, showed me a picture of a new laptop. I believe it was by Sony. I couldn't believe it. I don't know the actual measurement. It looked like it could have been 1/2 inch, 3/8 inch. We are working on an energy source that can be used in the microelectronic industry of the future. When Bruce and I began to work with the various materials, I began to work with a very special one. It is one of the exotic materials that was spoken about in the Exotic Research magazine. What we have done here and again, this is a prototype. The end product will look different than this because it will be assembled by high-speed robots. We take a fritted semiconductor material with a proprietary process. We apply it to a base material. You can use many different types. I'm not going to tell you what I'm using on this one, but we have probably 250 more samples that we need to go through. This device right here is dry, it's hard. You'll be able to look at it in a few minutes. And what we do we mount it. Well, this is just for the demonstration. There are many ways to do this. This device will continually charge a capacitor. The charge is not high, but it's always there. You can discharge the capacitor. It takes time for it to build up. I put 4 of these together, and I can get about 1 volt. The amperage is very low. It's in the microamp range, but it's good enough for many of the microelectronic devices that exist today. There are many ways to put these in series, parallel, With the proper circuitry, you can just go from one bank to the other and keep picking it up from one bank, picking it up from the next bank. While you're picking it up from the banks downline, the previous ones are recharging. This works. It's dry. It will last forever. Very likely it is a thermoelectric effect. I cannot prove it at this point in time. So please forgive me. I can't give you all the answers. And I see the future for these devices, especially to help free the American people. Yes, there are many niches in industry that these devices can be used for. But I want you to know that in my work, I will see to it that the common everyday American will have an opportunity to purchase something to help them get along a little bit easier, especially with their electric bills. I don't say I have the answer to it, but we are at the beginning of something very big, if the people will just stand together. Let me do a demonstration now, see if we can get a few sparks. I will go to the back in just a moment, but I need to do some setup here. I'm pressing some buttons at the back of this device. In real life, this will all be done by very low current electronic switching circuits. We're triggering the high voltage circuit at this time. I bought some switches. I won't say where I bought them from, but I discovered after I had them installed and no more time to put new ones in that they were not the best of quality. You know, that happens. Okay, this one is doing exactly what I said it would. We're ready on one. If we can't, all right. Now, I want you to notice that I do not have a weapon on me, because what you're going to hear is going to sound like a fairly good-sized caliber weapon. When Bruce first saw me do this, he said, "Man, you crazy." Well, I tested it thoroughly. We're looking at about between 350 and 380 volts out. If you go across it, it'll let you know it. It happened to me. I was touching something I didn't know I was touching. It's going to be loud. So if you can put the camera down here. I have a small wire. It's called exploding wires. I'm just doing it to show there is a lot of energy. We'll use the light bulbs in a moment. And I want you to know that Dr. Camus checked these terminals with me and verified there was no charge on them. I can do this for a long time. I love it. My lovely wife comes to my shop occasionally and says, "Are you playing again?" Of course, all inventors play. No light bulbs, huh? I think we tripped it. You have to go back and re-trigger it. Now, this is just pulsed. In the actual unit, there will be many, possibly as many as 12, micro-miniature high-voltage circuits, and they can be added together, smoothed out with capacitors, triggered by circuitry, and you can have a very smooth output. This is about between 350 and 380 volts. And I'm not going to tell you what the wattage is. I'm making no claims at this time, nor am I going to tell you what the amperage is. You see the results. This will come out at a later date. Please watch for it. I don't know, perhaps it'll be on the internet. Bruce is going to have to help me with this, getting it on the internet, because I want to get it out to you. There are things I will not reveal because they are proprietary. That's a 270 volt street lamp. Now, I don't recommend anybody come up and touch anything here because it will set you on the floor if you're not aware of what's going to happen. Now, you're probably wondering, this thing should have started already. We'll be finishing up very shortly. As all inventors, I look at many different concepts. Does anyone know what this device is right here that I just started? Does anyone know? This is a Stirling engine. If the camera could look at this, this is ice water. Notice it's still running. There is a version I wanted that you can put in your hand. It will run on the heat of your hand or ice water, ice, whatever. As I said earlier, being an inventor, you begin to look, well, could some things be married? Could we take the best of one world, the best of another world, and put it together? That could very well happen down the road. So at this time, again, I would like to thank all of those who helped me, who provided information, and I hope in the future that we can put equipment out there that can be used by the common everyday American to have freedom, to be off the grid if necessary, and to live their life in peace. So I want to thank you very much for being patient and hearing me out. Thank you.